Is this thing working? Are we live? It looks like we're live. What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic whatever day you're watching this. Coming into this Two Wheel Tuesdays a little bit on the late side. Been putting in some work on the bikes. Couple of updates to bring you guys. And what else? Oh, yeah. Upcoming newer bikes, just in terms of general market. What is it looking like out there? What's the landscape? And what is the state of these, the somewhat, at least it seems, hotly contested middleweight segment? I'm going to be talking about some upcoming videos that I'm trying to put together. I got one that I just cannot get through, and then some motorcycle updates on the fleet. So here's the thing. We're going to kick this off talking about, updates on the bikes in the fleet. I recently took out the Bonneville T120, was able to get some miles on that bike. I have not been able to ride that bike in a long time. I've been riding mainly sport bikes and bikes for riding reviews leading up to this. And that bike, unfortunately, is kind of sat in the corner of the shop collecting dust. So I was able to get the bike out and ride it. And the thing is, though, you got to watch out for this modern ethanol fuel. I had to run that bike for a while, put some fresh gas in it, and try to freshen everything up with that bike. It's on the radar for an oil change. But when I was riding that bike, this is what ties into this whole. I tried to put together a video, and it absolutely dissolved. And this is one of the things that happens when you're trying to put together a video, and invariably, sometimes it just doesn't, for whatever reason, click. So the T120 1200cc parallel twin Triumph, awesome bike, love riding it. Thing is, though, I also love riding my GSXR 600. Problem with the 600 that I have, and I say problem, I need to quit saying that word, the challenge, the observation, I should say, because it's problem like a math problem, not problem like an issue, right? But the funny thing is that I ride the GSXR 600, and I'm reminded of this trope that you always pick up on with journalists saying usable power, right? And that these 600s, you got to rev them to the moon to get any performance out of them. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Look, I ride my GSXR 600 as often as I humanly possibly can. That's how much I love riding that bike. Every bit as much as the 750. And I get off of that bike, and I never think that the bike doesn't have usable power. I'm still a bit confused by what that means, because my T120 apparently is the poster child for usable power, but they literally could not be further apart from each other, right? And so I'm trying to put together this video that ties those two bikes together. I've got literally double the displacement with half the cylinders with the T120. So each cylinder is the total displacement of my GSXR 600. All of it, all four cylinders into one, right? The funny thing is when I ride them, there's some strange correlations. So if the T120 is going down the road at highway speed, 75-ish miles an hour, it's turning 3,500 RPM. My GSXR 600 at roughly the same speed is turning about 7,000 RPM. Half the displacement, but turning twice as fast. So these are just air pumps, right? Aren't they consuming roughly the same amount of air? Same amount of air means you need the same amount of fuel. And at those RPM levels and at that load level, taking away wind resistance, because the Bonneville is going to be way worse, but shouldn't they be making the same power? I mean, So you start doing the math on these things and it gets a little funny. As you look at the gearing and the power output and the actual torque multiplication, they end up being very close. That's the point of this. And I was trying to put something together that would illustrate that, but I couldn't do it. I was failing spectacularly through this little exercise that I was trying to put together. And it's also interesting too that the two motorcycles, this is the other half of it that I was trying to tie into it. So usable power. They're both bringing in the same amount of air, and it's stoichiometric for gasoline. They're going to be burning the same amount of fuel, same air, same fuel, same power, right? But not necessarily because of torque and RPM and the horsepower and everything else. I get all of that. But here's the thing. If you're measuring fuel just from a weight point of view, they're using the same amount of grams of fuel. But the power delivery is literally flipped upside down, where the T120 makes all of its power from 1,000 RPM to 6,000 RPM. Realistically speaking, you can stretch it to 65, but you get the idea. Let's call it 65 because it's got a red line of 7,000 RPM. But all of its power is early on, and then you have to take an early upshift if you want to, be getting on it with that bike. Whereas the 600, it's designed to rev the RPMs that it revs to, so you're not revving it to the moon. You're just taking advantage of the RPM window that this machine was engineered to work around. Anyway, you can see where this is going, and I was trying to put this video together and just show that, as you're riding these bikes, you notice that, the T120, you got to take a lot of upshifts. It doesn't really have a high top speed at all. And it's just weird how an engine that is half the size can make 50% more horsepower while making 50% almost of the torque. Right? It's a little bit more than that, but you get the idea. So that's how I was trying to put that together. And again, that whole video just absolutely could not seem to find a rhythm. And so that's why I'm talking about it on the live show. By the way, if you're new to the live show, this is my opportunity to hang out with you guys, to chat, interact directly with you. It's also where I will kind of work through upcoming videos. If I can't really get one to stick, like I'm throwing it onto the wall and it just keeps bouncing off, then I'll basically do that video as a live show. And sometimes that works better. But let me check in with you guys. Matt is in. Sport bikes equals best bikes. Agreed. I like them. Skids is in saying, good evening, B. Got the ball guy with the flex and the specs. I like it. John's in saying, hello, everyone. Miki is in. Howdy. Howdy back. So yeah, it's kind of funny. The way that it kind of shapes up sometimes when I'm trying to put these videos together, you never know what's going to work. And some of the best videos that I've done in terms of performance on the channel have objectively been some of the worst videos that I've ever put out. So I've learned that if I try too hard to get a video to stick, a lot of times it's just not going to work. And what I'll probably do, trying to get to the point here, is I'll end up talking about this whole weird usable power thing. I'm going to be talking about that on a ride along video with the 600. So it's going to be more like GSXR 600, all the usable power or whatever. It's going to be something along the lines of that. So the next time you see the red GSXR 600 on a ride along, that's probably what I'm going to be talking about with that bike. I will say though that updates as far as motorcycles. So I dropped, you're going to love this. And this falls under the old, it still happens to all of us type thing. I was letting the blue GSXR warm up right outside of the shop. And as it was idling, I didn't really notice, but I guess the pitch of the concrete is down ever so slightly. But the bike had been out there. I've had bikes out there idling and warming up numerous times, never had an issue. And it's kind of funny because you never have a problem until you have a problem, right? So I'm standing there and I'm getting my helmet all sorted out, getting my gloves, getting all this stuff put together. And I just watch the bike go. It just rolls forward ever so slightly and bam, drops on the left-hand side. And it dropped. It just dead landed right on it. Anyway, broke a fairing, actually kind of gacked a couple of fairings, but I'm going to replace one for sure. But some hardware too. I got to replace, a bunch of just miscellaneous crap. So yeah, don't leave your bike unattended when you're letting it warm up. An expensive lesson has been learned. But as far as the rest of the fleet, so because of that, couldn't take the blue bike out because, well, it was broken. So I grabbed the keys to Smokey, aka Shadow, the gray GSXR 750, and met my good buddy Orange Crush in some of our favorite roads that we like to go run on. And the thing is I took the 750, not the 1000. It's a little bit of foreshadowing for you. Guys, I had more fun, way more fun on the 750 than I have ever had once ever on the 1000. And what's interesting about this is that I had no plans on taking that gray bike out on the day. It was the blue bike because I wanted to get the blue bike sorted out. Not that you really have to. You just kind of set them up as stock and let her rip. But I wanted to get some time with the blue bike. That didn't work out. I ended up on the gray bike. I was a little bit worried about those Michelin Power 6s. A little bit, not really worried. It was just, okay, how are these tires going to do? I'm so used to S22s and S23s being more or less a cheat code when you're out getting these things, on the side of the tire, really blasting through some corners, things like that. You learn to rely on these tires, and with the feedback of the 750 and the 600 for that matter, with that front end, the Power 6s did phenomenally well. Matter of fact, there was no skittering, no weirdness to it. It was perfect. It was like it was on rails. So the funny thing is that, when we're talking about the two different bikes being a little bit different, I'll tell you that the more Mafia tune on the gray bike with the Yoshimura R77 going down one tooth on the front sprocket, guys, all of that combined, that bike was dialed in, and I was able to run at a nice elevated pace without any kind of how do you put it? Like there was no drama, the way that you can sometimes get some drama out of a leader class bike, especially when you really start pushing the pace. And I don't mean spirited, I mean pushing the pace. Lots of wide open, as you're coming out of your apex, rolling into the throttle as the bike is coming up. Once you're up, you're already pinned. That type of aggressive pace. Basically kind of like, top of B group pace. And I'm telling you, the bike was absolutely perfect. And the thing about it that kind of blew my mind, GSXR 750 versus GSXR 1000 in that little arena, is that the 750 is more comfortable on the way out, which is about an hour and 15 minutes to get there and an hour and 15 minutes back. But it's more comfortable going out, more comfortable coming back, more importantly, and so much better mid-corner. So much better front end feel. So that, for me, I guess that's my thing. And where I went wrong with the leader bikes, or where I have been going wrong, and this takes nothing away from the GSXR 1000, but I think the reality is that bike is just not the right leader bike for me. I liked the R1 better. I would like to spend more time with an R1 though, because my experience with the R1 is that it had better front end feel than the GSX-R 1000. And apparently that's how my brain is wired. And I get it. Some guys don't freaking like that. I've for everybody that I've talked to that doesn't like a lot of front end feel, like a lot of front end feedback, like the GSXR middleweights give. I think the R9 actually falls into that category as well. The R1 kind of falls into that category a little bit. Believe it or not, the Hayabusa falls into that category, where you've got a lot of front end feel and you've got a great understanding, as far, at least it seems like you've got a great understanding. It's a little bit heavier to steer, but you get the idea. For everybody that likes that, it's almost like you're in two different camps. And if you're on a bike like my 636, for example, the 636 did not have anywhere near the front end feel that the GSXR middleweights do. And I never really felt comfortable on that bike. I just had to get out there and accept that I was going to be on the side of the tire and just kind of know that the front is going to be doing what I'm expecting it to do. But it never really was as, it never really felt as planted, if you will. So I guess for me, I kind of know what I like. And I tried something new by going away from the GSXRs, and lesson learned, that was a mistake. Let's see. Oh, John saying that happened to my friend up in North Carolina about the bike just ding, 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 and then falling over. It's embarrassing. Oh, Sovereign saying his ES350 needs head gaskets. Well, that will happen. But yeah, it's been it's kind of hard to do though on ES350. The last that's what they're driving around, fighting Skynet with. But yeah, so that's but it was so crazy because we head out and it was foggy as hell, looked just like San Francisco, looked just like we were up in the mountains. And but it was crazy. It really was. It was kind of it was a very fun trip. And I got a chance to, really lean on a set of Michelin Power Sixes. They did amazingly well. Got to have a blast with a buddy and had a blast with a motorcycle that I don't know could be any better dialed in. I'd say, not to completely change the topic, but speaking of middleweights, predictions for the Daytona 200 in a month. I have no idea. John's asking, have you checked out the 26 Harley-Davidson Road Glide ST? No, but I think so. I don't know if they're at Stubbs yet or not. I'm going to be running over to the Harley-Davidson dealership probably tomorrow. I'll be at that facility. I've got to go by the metric side anyway, so I'm wanting to go by there and check out and see what's going on. Mickey's asking, if I had to order rears for the 750, would you get the 180/60 or 190/55? Okay, good question, but it's a loaded question because the S23s and the Power 6s do not come in 180/60. The RS11 does, but not the Hyper Sport tires. I like the 190/55 a lot. You don't use the entire, even when you've got that bike really on the side of the tire, you're not using all of the tires, so to speak. It's actually kind of good. And if you're worried about the weight, one versus the next, whatever, they're about the same. Don't worry about that. I know some guys go, 190/55 is heavier, man. Don't worry about that stuff. In side-by-side comparisons, whatever differences that there are did not amount to enough of a difference for you to be able to see it. blue bike versus gray bike side by side getting run, don't worry about it. So I like the 190/55. They're easier to get. They're less expensive typically. And I am loving the 190/55 on the back of the gray bike. Oh, Sovereign's got the old supercharged Range Rovers. Those were fun. A friend of mine had one of those. But yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun reacquainting myself with the GSXR middleweights. And I gotta say, this is another thing. When I'm riding the 750, I'm asking, in some of those ride along videos, why aren't other manufacturers making more of that bike? And it will forever blow my mind that, Honda doesn't have CBR 750, or, Yamaha didn't make a, YZF 750. It just doesn't seem to make any sense to me that a bike that is that good and that fun to ride, that confidence inspiring, in everything that comes with all that is Gixxer middleweight, how that's not part of every manufacturer's lineup. And I get it. There's always going to be some kind of a draw to, or a callback to emission standards or whatever. That's bullshit. Let me tell you this. If you can make a liter bike pass emissions, you can make a 3/4 liter bike pass emissions. I just don't buy that. I'm sorry. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And I just, I don't know. I'm blown away by the fact that the R9 isn't accompanied by something that's a bit more hardcore that would have like a CP3 version of a 750. But what also is kind of weird is, how do I put this? Okay, like the KTM RCR 990, that's a bike for me that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And I don't know how. I've got to get a leg over one. I guess I'm taking forever to get to a point. I'm sorry about that. But to me, there's got to be a space before you get to leader bike. If you are going to get to leader bike, that is going to prepare you for the kind of speed that those bikes can actually gather up, the closing speed and all of that. And the RCR 990, the R9, and the what else? Oh, the V2. I keep thinking the V2 Panigale for me is not even part of it. So, but those bikes aren't going to get you there. They're great bikes for guys that are moving up into, like, coming from an A2 class for like their second bike, for something that is going to give them an idea for how a full-size sport bike is going to handle without overwhelming the senses with a whole lot of extra power that they've now got to try to manage and sort out and everything else. When you're still trying to get the, your closing speed figured out, your braking zones figured out for your favorite BNC roads, and what you can really, I'm going to say get away with, but what your skill set and reality, that humbling portion of your riding journey when you're learning still, it keeps you safe in that range because it has all the electronics and everything else to keep you good, right? So the thing is that when you have, how do I put this? When you have these softer middleweights, it's almost like you're building a wall between middleweight and leader bike that wasn't there before. And I'm even talking about the 600s, like GSXR 600, CBR 600. if the R6 would ever come back, which I guess it can't now because of costs more than anything else. But the ZX6 falls into this. There's an area where you don't want to get caught up. And it's in this usable power range. See how I'm kind of tying all that together? This is why putting that video together is practically impossible, because I start talking about one thing, then my brain just starts picking out other stuff. But I guess where I'm going with this is I've ridden the XSR 900. And by the way, I didn't realize that bike was tuned. So I've got a very strong understanding of how the R9 is going to get down the road. Compared to a GSXR 600, it's really not a fair comparison for the R9. And this whole usable power argument, I don't know if I'm really on board with it anymore, because the more you start to learn and the more you start to push the pace and the better your skill set is, I don't really want to call it usable power. I want to call it more like learnable power. Because once you get to a point where you've mastered that power level and that handling level, and I say mastering, in other words, you're very proficient at it. I should have said that. You're not really going to find yourself with somewhere else to go, right? Like, where do you go after R9? Because I can assure you an R1 is on a completely different planet than an R9. What about RCR 990? That's a weird one, because you've got a parallel twin supposedly making pretty decent power, but it's a flat power curve. And there's not a whole lot of fast that comes with that. It's fun on the street, but it's not fun where it counts. And I suppose for me, there's not like a RCR 1390, right? So anyway, I'm just curious as far as where manufacturers taking this. Is the R9 supposed to be the last bike you ever buy when it comes to sport bikes? Well, obviously not. But with the R1 being difficult to get your hands on, so is the R9, and nothing in KTM's lineup that's aspirational past the RCR, it kind of does make you wonder. And the more I do ride these old school bikes, and I say that with the most loving, and from the most loving place over here, but that's what the GSXR 600 and GSXR 750s are. They're old school bikes. And as I'm riding them, more and more, I'm finding that I like that a lot better than some of these more tech-laden bikes. And the reason why is because everything just feels so much more direct, but more to the point, they make so much more horsepower. And if they're not making so much more horsepower outright, they've got significantly more aggressive gearing in their favor. And this is even significantly more aggressive in the way that it's more appropriate for the higher RPM engine. So there's really no feel like there's a loss in usable power, but you get the rush, you get the fast of it. That's the thing that gets, I'll put it to you like this. Perfect example is the GSXR 600. The GSXR 600 will go a God's honest 150 miles an hour. It will absolutely do that. And I look at what the top speeds are for like a R9. And an R9, I think its listed stock is 152, something along those lines, right? But the acceleration curve on that bike, you almost wonder, okay, it'll do that speed, but you're going to be in 6th gear and you're going to have, compared to Redline, as the Redline's looking at it, maybe 2000 RPM before that, maybe. Where the GSXR 600, if it weren't for the nannies, it would pull straight to Redline in that gear. So it's kind of funny. How is it, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around this, how do you make a 900cc engine act like a 600 in terms of outright power? I don't know. And this is another area where dyno numbers don't mean anything. I love, and this is another thing on this next ride along video with the 600 that I'm going to try to convey, in that the dyno number just simply doesn't tell you what the bike is going to be like to ride. The reason why is because every motorcycle is geared differently. Every motorcycle has different, and when I say geared, I mean primary reduction ratio. That's the reduction ratio from the engine to the transmission. From there, you have transmission ratios, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you've got 6 gears, you get the idea. Then you have your final, which is your sprockets, your primary drive, and then your driven gear out back. Different minor variations in that algorithm, or in that calculation, can change how that bike is going to react. And so you don't compare, the engines are not run through like transmissions like what you would see in cars. You know, you put it in 1-to-1 and you let it rip. And yeah, not really, because the RPM variances are so great, right? So anyway, it all ties back to that usable power argument. And I'm trying to put this video together that makes sense. That's not some, rambling, BS about whatever. And I got to at least be able to try to make sense of this while I'm riding a bike too. But, the funny thing is that the more I focus on these bikes, and the more bikes that I've ridden, and this is something that probably will come up in that video, and I've said this before, and I got to catch myself a little bit, but it really was better back in the day when you had definite steps, A to B, B to C, moving up through the ranks. The 600s weren't quite as good as they are now. They didn't quite make that much power like they do now, but they were still pretty close. You had 750s, you had the 1000s that came after it, but the 1000s weren't making the kind of crazy power that they are now. And so there was always some ebb and flow and some middle ground that you could find yourself falling into. So anyway, that's another place that I'm looking at in terms of, how is it different back in the day? It's that they weren't making bikes to try to fit a narrative. They were making bikes to win races. And so I'm also going to be talking about the GSXR middleweights in, how do I put this? So back in the day, about every 2 to 4 years, the 600s were being updated. And obviously it's not like that anymore, but every couple of years, there was some kind of leap forward. And after 2006, that kind of went away. And the popularity of the super sport started to drop. Naked started to go up for reasons. And, all that development that was going into those super sport bikes for racing homologation, it kind of went away. And now with some of these super middleweights, I guess I would call them, there's an argument to be made that they're bringing these bikes back. And I'm glad for that. And we've talked about this on the live show before, where the Chinese manufacturers, man, they still think it's 2006. They're making 4-cylinder sport bikes, which I think is freaking awesome. And I'm just curious as far as how long it's going to take for that to really start to permeate motorcycling in general. Anyway, that's really not part of that video that's coming up, but it does bear mentioning. Let's see. Let's see here. So that is your motorcycle. Oh, as far as upcoming bikes, I'm going to try to do a ride and review on Red Alert. I am really wanting to do a ride and review on another Hayabusa. So be on the lookout for that. Potentially do some more Harley Davidson content, although I can't seem to pay anybody to watch that content. I do like the motorcycles, and I would like to spend a bit more time with either a street glide or a road glide. So we're going to try to get one of those videos put together. And if I can get a leg over a 1200 Sportster, I will certainly do that too, because it's still, you know, one of my all-time favorites. Really do like the 1200 Sportster. Let's see here. Oh, looks like y'all are talking about cars. Let's see. Oh, Matt saying, I blame the Euro emissions regulations. Damn hippies. I'll tell you something. The funny thing is, so check this out. This is gonna blow your mind. Every time there is a hardcore push for emissions in some way, shape, or form, it almost always breeds innovation. And we found this, especially with the 636, where it's a Euro 5 compliant bike. It's got smaller cams, but they've done some things to the bike where it actually makes more power than the outgoing bike. How does that work? We're also going to be seeing this potentially with, if we ever get a chance to see one, the GSXR 1000, where you've got less aggressive camshafts, but better flowing cylinder heads coupled with higher compression. Next thing you know, you've got a bike that's with pipes and tunes making, 3 or 4% more to the rear tire. Not that you need it in that class of bike, but I think you get the idea. The downside, though, is that I feel like it is a bit of an overreach. Remember, these are motorcycles, for crying out loud. They don't put out shit for emissions. They're always going to be more fuel efficient. They're going to be more space efficient, if nothing else, than a car. I don't understand how they fall under the same type of regulations as a car would. And there's no gaming the system here either. If it's got 2 wheels, it's a motorcycle. If it's got 3 wheels, it might be a motorcycle, but let it slide if it weighs less than, 1,500 pounds. But if it's got 4 wheels, bro, it's a car. It's got to fall under car emission standards. And I just don't understand the logic behind the whole motorcycle and emissions thing and all of that. But that being said, without those emissions constraints, we wouldn't have bikes like the R9. And the world would have bikes like the GSXR 750 and the GSXR 600 and the R6. I say the R6. The R6 wouldn't still be there the way it is now today, boys. I can promise you that. That bike costs way too much money to build. And unless you want to spend $16,000 on a 600, you're going to be buying something else, I promise. John's asking, did you see CF Moto bought 75% of KTM Moto Group? Yes. So here's the funny thing about that. Shit. So CF Moto bought 75% of KTM, but Bajaj is the company that bailed them out. KTM has always had a partnership with CF Moto on some level. I didn't know. Well, I saw it. I didn't know if that went through. If it did, I need to look into that. But here's the funny thing. All right. So you've heard me sit here talking about the RCR 990 over and over and over again, right? And that's what everybody's talking about. And if you're into motorcycles and you're watching YouTube, there's going to be a lot of that. Okay, check this out. If you go to a dealership that sells CF Moto and you throw a leg over the 675 SS, it will prepare you for what the RCR 990 is going to feel like. The way that my brain processed when I threw a leg over the RCR 990, I had sat on the 675, and the 675 CF Moto, it's a neat bike. I've never ridden one. I've sat on one, but I did ride, what was it, the 450 SS? I actually kind of like that bike. I mean, they're very inexpensive and they'll go 100 miles an hour easily, by the way. They'll do about 105, 110. But the point of that is they don't cost anything. It's like buying a pit bike. Well, the 675, it's actually got pretty good fit and finish to it also. But the bars are wide in the seating position, which I did not really care for on the 675, is identical to the RCR 990. It's not that it's bad. It's just we're all wired differently. And the way that my brain works, it's still stuck in, 2011. So it's kind of a funny thing when you start to get into, how do I put this? When you start to get into the differences or the similarities and the fact that we've got KTM buying and Bajaj, or I'm sorry, CF Moto buying and Bajaj buying or bailing out KTM, how much of that technology is going to start to filter through both of those companies? Probably not that much through Bajaj, but CF Moto is going to be eating that stuff up. So we'll just have to see. Let's see. Bear with me. Oh, Skid's hanging out with John. Yeah, not really surprised about the CF Moto thing. Yeah, they have a big stake in that company. They're saying do a Harley video where you just say brother. You know, the funny thing is I really like the Harleys that I say Harley. That is so disrespectful. It's Harley Davidson. You talk about pet peeves. Okay, so Harley is the shorthand slang for Harley Davidson, right? The brand, the bar and shield. But it is Harley Davidson. It's the last name of the two founders of the company. Harley Davidson is not a person. A lot of people get that mixed up. It is not some dude named Harley Davidson that put this together. It was what's his face Harley, and then the 3 or 4 Davidson brothers that put this thing together. Really, it should be Davidson Harley, and you should be riding around on Davidsons. Anyway, just kind of a thing. Going to the Harley dealers, no, it's a Harley Davidson. Give it the respect that it deserves. Don't try to shorthand the brand. It pisses me off. And I'm not even a Harley guy. I'm more of a Harley heritage guy, like Harley racing, flat tracks and street racing and drag racing and all of that. That's the heritage. That's what I remember Harley Davidson as a kid. But this is not coming from anywhere. This is solely coming, and it's not a Harley. It's a Harley Davidson. Anyway, getting back to Skid saying, I'll do it. Skid's got a nice street glide. Sorry, be stopping with the off topic. Skid saying, just skip over. Yeah, if you guys are off topic, I'll just bounce over you guys. I don't want to get in the middle of that. Sovereign saying, I miss B with the Hellcat. I don't miss that car at all. Every once in a while, somebody will ask about, hey, do you miss it? What would you do it all over again? I would absolutely do it all over again. I don't God, I just can't recommend it though. I love them. They're built like a tank, but there's because there's no drag strip to go to anymore. It's almost it doesn't really pay to have that car anymore. But I miss the car though. I do kind of miss the car. I was saying great point on motorcycle emissions. They're very, very, very stupid to me. So I'm saying his brother has a KTM dirt bike. Awesome dirt bike. You can beat the hell out of those things. I did kind of laugh when I saw brother. Skids is checking out. See you, Skids. John saying good night. Mike's saying, I'm not even surprised that Chinese bikes are getting good. China's been getting good at a lot of things. Man, look, I'm just going to say this. Look around you. Everything that is around you, that surrounds you, is made in China. So I don't know what the fuss is about. I don't know why everybody gets all miffed about, it's made in China. Yeah, like everything. And it's not just everything that is around you. I mean, that bicycle is made in Italy. That fridge, though, is made in China. That fridge wasn't, though. That fridge, by the way, that brown one, that brown fridge is almost as old as I am. In fact, it might be as old as I am. But everything you see in some point or another is made in China. And if it's not made in China, it's got Chinese parts in it. So talking about Harley Davidson, yeah, it's an American brand, but it's got a lot of Chinese parts in it because that's how you have to do things nowadays in a global economy. But yeah, I mean, no doubt they're going to make some decent stuff. It's not going to be top shelf because they can't make top shelf stuff and be competitive with it because nobody's going to pay that kind of money for what is in essence Chinese craftsmanship, but you get what you pay for. Sorry, saying you don't miss your Hellcat? Well, I do miss the 392. I miss the 392 in a way. I miss the 392 more than the Hellcat because I just liked that platform and liked that car a lot. And the problem with Hellcat life is that, see, here's the problem with the Hellcat. They're never fast enough. They're never fast enough. And when you make them plenty fast, you're just going to get stomped on by some kid with a freaking Mustang and a supercharger on the highway that can't be bothered to race you from a dig. And then if you find somebody to race you from a dig, chances are they're going to be in something all-wheel drive. They're going to be in in an F-150 with a supercharger. They're going to be in a Trackhawk or something that can actually hook on the street. The problem, and I've said this about the Hellcat platforms over and over again. I may do a Mopar chat live at some point again, but as these cars are kind of filtering through the used car, like, I don't know, phase that they have to go through, a lot of these cars are coming up for sale again, and people are just kind of tired of them. And every blessing that the Hellcat has, it's also a curse. And yeah, I miss the car, but I don't miss some of the headaches that came with it, like fuel pumps that have to be swapped out every 2 to 3 years, or fuel pump drivers having to be swapped out, or all the electrical gremlins, or, insert whatever problem you want to throw at it. And it was time to move on, unfortunately. Chinesium alloy. Absolutely. It's a good phrase. I don't want to try to rule the roost off passing the boost. Listen, yeah, and your pocketbook will save you, or thank you, and you'll be saved from a lot of headaches. Oh, Matt talking about the patrols that are overseas. It's not even that. The thing is that it's like with anything. Okay, when you start making more power, the power becomes that is the only trait of the thing now that is remarkable. So bringing it back to bikes, GSXR 1000. When you pipe and tune and filter a GSXR 1000, it's no longer that adorable leader bike that you bought. It's got some teeth to it. And you find that the only redeeming quality that that bike then has is the fact that it's fast, because the suspension's got to be stiff to be able to manage the kind of power that it's putting out. The bike has to, you're going to be managing a lot harder corner exit. You're going to be going through brakes because you're going to have a lot faster corner entry. You're going to be going through tires at a fantastic rate. You literally burn more in tires than you do in gas per 100 miles of gas tank riding. I did the math, go figure, right? There's a lot that comes with, and all of that translates back over to the cars too. You end up, it's just not worth it. The best bet is to have something that's fun, that's well balanced. And like, as long as Orange Crush had a great quote on this, like, if it looks good and it sounds good, it's going to fit the mold. If it's not as fast, you would never know, because you're not in a comparative situation over and over and over with this thing. And even if you were, you're not being paid to win these races, if you even want to call them that. So there's no point to it. And that's why with bikes, and this is where shit gets really humbling when it comes to motorcycles, because, you can get out on the track or on your favorite B and C roads with some heavy artillery underneath you and get passed by somebody on a CBR 600 or, God forbid, a ZX4, because they handle better, because they're more confidence inspiring, because they're just better. It's a better tool for the job that they're out there to do. This is not, this happens all the time. And it's a humbling experience for guys on much bigger bikes when these kind of things happen. What's even worse is when you have somebody behind you that's bored trying to get around you, and you've got some clown that's just, throttle happy, that, creeps it through the corners and then pins it on straights. And, you run into those guys sometimes, and you'll find that the smaller bike guys will shut them down pretty quickly in the corners and then check out. But it's just the idea that the power of the thing becomes so overwhelming as far as the only thing that is a good thing about that bike, and that's good by subjective standards. There's no objective standard to this, that after a while, you elevate to this point, and then everything else starts to weigh down. Again, the tire thing, wear on the chains, wear on the sprockets, wear on this other stuff. And the same all goes to the car like that, because I'm also the same guy that's thinking about Oh, Matt's saying, honestly, and I know you'll laugh at my pitiful capabilities, I am worried about getting toothless exhaust ECU flash. Toothless, by the way, is the R9, turning up the power above my current ability. Don't worry so much about that, because anything you're going to do, Matt, is not going to change the complexion of that bike to a point where it's going to be spooky. It'll do away with that weird second gear stuff that the R9s and the XSRs and the MT09s have, but don't worry about that. It's just going to sound good, and it's going to be peppy. And outside of that, the power difference, if I'm being honest, the only time you're going to notice is if you're on the very, very far right side of the tack, and you're going to notice some better throttle response through the mid-range. Sovereign's liking the 392s. Yeah, I'm too much into the 392s. I'm actually more into 6.1s if I'm being honest. Um, Mike saying, sorry, I'm a noob, but what is the 392? Oh, that's the Mopar. It's the Dodge engine designation of the 392. They're talking about cars and kind of working some car stuff in here. So I'm saying channel hiccups. Yeah, we'll get some channel hiccups every once in a while. But it looks like it's not been as bad. I'm cool with that. Mickey's saying 750 checks all the boxes. See, that's the thing. That's the dadgum thing, isn't it? Okay, so look, I don't mean to get on I don't mean to start waving my flags or anything about GSXR 750. Because if I'm waving a flag for GSXR 750, dude, I got to bring little sister into this too, dude. The red and white GSXR 600 is so good that I'm bringing her into this conversation as well. But the 750 in particular does check all of the boxes. It's haul ass fast. You know, that bike will do. There's a straight that we run out the bikes a little bit on. The 750 will cover 160 with like hardly any breath or sweat being dropped. I mean, that thing is no problem. And that's with a bike that's got a speedo healer. Okay. So it's not like I'm like, oh, it's showing 160, but you're really doing 150 or 145. No, this is a dialed in speedo healer with 9.2% correction, by the way, with the gear. So just anyway, and the bigger tire. But I guess the point that I'm getting to is yes, it is the best of all worlds. Why? It's got the mile an hour. It's got the power on corner exit. It's got decent brakes. It probably needs better pads, but you get the idea. God, there's so much about it that is so good. That reminds me, I do need to get different pads for the 600. They're just all so good though. Why can't there, like, I just don't. Suzuki sells every GSXR 750 they make. To have a GSXR 750 sit for more than 3 months on the floor is rare. And they sell every 600 that they make, provided that the colorways look good anyway. There's no reason to ever worry about having availability of a GSXR 600 or 750 in any Gixxer dealership, in any Suzuki dealership. They're there. It's not like it's the CBR 600, which is sometimes hard to find, although the last one out of the dealership sold last week. But there's always availability with that bike. There's hardly any availability on the R9 right now, which is scary when you think about it. And that's the only well, there you can get the RCR 990, but again, the pricing just starts getting just dumber and stupider the higher in you go. Of the three super middleweights, I'm sorry, but even though it's the lowest in power, I would probably have to go with the R9, just based on the way that it would feel and the way that it would, work within like dealer support. But the point that I'm trying to get to is you can make bikes like the GSXR 750 and sell them in the North American markets and be profitable. And I say North American markets, that's to say the Western Hemisphere, if you will, Australia and New Zealand. Again, where Suzuki sells every one that they make, all of them. And they're plentiful. It just blows my mind. Anyway. Sovereign saying, oh yeah, the 6.1. Do like the 6.1. Yeah, the 485 horse cars. The first ones were 475 and the later ones were 2014 is what got us the 392. Oh, Matt's saying, yeah, Gixxers, including the Busa, never stay long at Iron Pony here, even in winter. Dude, I tell you what, Busas, sell every one of those too, man. I'm telling you, Suzuki has got it figured out. There's a thing that Suzuki will do when that nobody else will, and they have put together something that is very profitable. That is exactly what you want in terms of handling, power, feel, the whole bit to a certain demographic. And I'm convinced, I am truly convinced that Suzuki makes the absolute best retro motorcycles in existence today. GSXR 600, 750, and Hayabusa. You'd say, oh, those aren't retro bikes. Really? So the GSXR 600, well, the 750 anyway, hadn't changed since 2006. And the bike that, well, put it to you like this, for 20 years, it's in essence been the same bike. When is it a retro? Like, when do you start calling things retro? I'd say it's retro. It's not even retro. It's just hasn't changed row. Is that a word? Anyway, the Hayabusa, yeah, it's Euro 5 compliant. I would argue that it makes it a better bike. The Gen 3 Hayabusa, although it doesn't have the outright power potential that the Gen 2 did, is still making better, oh, here it is, usable power, in that it's just gruntier through the mid-range out to its power peak, which is roughly the same as the Gen 2. It just happens a little bit earlier. The point that I'm making is that people that buy these bikes, they want a Hayabusa, okay? They're not looking for the latest Hayabusa. They want Hayabusa. They want the Hayabusa experience. And the only way you can get that is to buy an actual freaking Hayabusa. The people that want Gixxer stuff, they want Gixxer experience. So you keep making the same thing over and over because people keep buying it. And you don't even have to update it. So again, I just kind of, I can't believe that other manufacturers haven't figured out that you can make a bike that people will love and people will buy and other markets will be jealous as sin of, kind of like I am of the XSR GP, that why didn't the United States get that? It's stupid. But you can have these bikes, sell them in these limited, restricted, or de-restricted, or whatever markets, and actually give the GSXR some competition. But you know what's funny? You know what cracks me up the most? Is that even if they did, I don't know that you would ever get Gixxer guy off of a Gixxer. Because you could say, oh, the Gixxer doesn't have a quick shifter. What does every Gixxer guy go? What do they say? Yeah, that's why I like it. Well, it doesn't have a TFT screen. Yeah, that's why I like it. Less to go wrong, less to get annoyed by. It doesn't have ABS. Yeah, that's why we like it. Doesn't have lean sensitive. Yeah, everything. It's like you're telling me good news like it's bad news. And so anyway. Mike, Gen 3 Busa? No, Gen 3 Busa is a sweetheart. It is definitely not any kind of a Widowmaker type bike at all. Gen 2, on the other hand, the Gen 2 lends itself better to modifications. Like if I was to really build a 2K bike and I said, look, I just want something that I know that I can do 210 at Texas 2K and I'll be happy. Then I would probably be better off building a second gen. If I just wanted to put something together that was a lighter weight version of a stock Busa and go out to 2K and just, go, I don't know, 180 miles an hour, maybe 190, then I would say, okay, go ahead and let's do a Gen 3. And it's just going to be a street bike that goes zoom, and that's it. So if I had a Gen 2, I would want to run 210, 220. And if I got a Gen 3, I'd be just happy as a clam running 180, 190. And you would do it like this. I mean, there's no drama, none with a Hayabusa. That's the beauty of that bike. It might weigh a lot, and it might be just a scud missile of a machine, but I'm telling you right now, if you've ever ridden one, especially a third gen, how smooth they are. There's a lot that there's so much about the Hayabusa that you can easily fall in love with, if going fast is your thing. But that's what I would do. I'd probably build a third gen. I don't know though. Second gen does kind of sound good. I have to look into some specs here. Anyway, Mike saying, absolutely love my GSXR 1000 with the Acura exhaust. It sounds and feels so beautiful. Love me some Gixxer Thou. For me, I like having more front end feel. And I don't know. I don't know. I just love the way that the Gixxer middleweights feel, man. I just feel like I am very understanding of my place in 3 dimensions with those bikes. Whereas on the Gixxer 1000, not so much. And that's the reason why I stepped away from the 636. Because guys, I really, really liked my 636. It was not without quite a bit of trepidation that I let that bike go. But with that being said, it feels like a leader bike when you ride it. It's the mass centralization is extremely, it is identical. There are certain parts of the 636 that from a feel point of view, not from, outright acceleration or doing it, but there are times where you're like, oh, that's a lot like the GSXR 1000, like mid corner, and you're really laying into it on a sweeper. That's where the 636 does exceptionally well. Is because it transitions so quickly. But it felt just like the GSXR 1000. And I found it, and I did this the other day too. I was on my GSXR 1000. And I thought, man, that's what it is. I don't feel as wired in to that bike as maybe I should. And maybe that opens up the door for a CBR 1000. And there is one at the dealership. I did do a ride review. Maybe that opens up the door for an R1. Maybe. I really like the R1, so we'll see. Or it just opens up the door for somebody to pick up a really well-sorted GSXR 1000 R model. It's an X-Star. And I just stick with the middleweights that seem to be like how my brain is wired. Sovereign's liking less computer stuff, for sure. Carney's saying, good evening. Saw that you talk about bikes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Me saying, that's why we like it. Oh, Mike saying he likes the middleweights, more fun to ride. I tell you what, see, here's the funny thing. The GSXR 750 piped, tuned, go down one on the primary sprocket, leave the suspension alone, and go up to a 190/55 tire on the back. I suggest doing that seriously, guys. It really is good for that bike. But here's the thing. That gray bike set up the way that it is now, I don't know of a bike that's better. It's the best bike in the fleet, hands down. And the blue bike could do good to do as good as that gray bike. Anything that's upcoming with the blue bike outside of putting it back together because I freaking dropped it, yeah, it's going to be about almost $600 worth of crap that I got to put back on that bike. And the bike just went like that. Anyway, the thing is that they're so good at being motorcycle that How do you let that bike for 15 years just absolutely own the segment? I mean, good on you. Great job security if you can get it, but dang, they're just so good. Oh, Mike's saying the thing about the thousands that you don't have to push them as hard, making them last longer. Man, I'll put it to you like this, bro. I've seen 600. Here's a fun fact. At the dealership, we get more 600s with 25, 35, 45,000 miles on them. 750s are kind of the same. And you know what's really funny is that, okay, where is it? Hold on. Is it in here? No, it's in the shop. Is it in the shop? I have 20, thought I brought it in here. I have 22 pages of history, of service history, of repair history on my 600. Now that bike only has about 5,600 miles on it, but there's so many pages because it's had, the valves, the head was off because of ethanol contamination. There's been a lot of work that's been done to that bike over the years, but there's so many middleweights because there's so many more of them sold that guys will get out there, they run them, lots of oil changes. It just over and over and over. The Suzuki's in particular, I can't really speak for all of them, but they're built like freaking little tanks. And so they're so rock solid that, I mean, it just almost defies explanation. And none of them are ridden easy. They're all just run the piss out of, but that's what they're meant for. It's kind of funny because talking down about a GSXR middleweight, like, oh, it's never been updated. You know what else hasn't been updated? Anvils. When's the last time you saw an anvil that didn't look like an anvil? That's the thing. I mean, if it works, you just keep making it. And golly, these guys. So I get what you're saying, but in practice, depends on the brand and it depends on the bike. I put on my 06, it was 44,000 miles when I let that bike go, and I should have never let it go. But outside of stators and voltage regulators, these bikes are freaking like the other side of reliable. They are the Lexus ES 350s of the world. Like saying, but a 600 is the best. Same with the 750. I mean, I love the 600. I'm sorry, guys. Listen, I know everybody loves Simmers on about 750s because I am, for sure. I can't quit puckering up to those things. But there is a reality when it comes to the 600s, and they are really that much fun to ride. And the funny thing is, and this is the other thing that I wanted to do, there's going to be me chatting when I'm riding the 600 about usable power. I'm going to be tying in that R9, but I'm mainly going to be also tying in the RCR 990 into this whole thing. I'm leaving the GSXR 750 out of the conversation. I'm going to deliberately do that because these bikes weren't meant to take the place of the GSXR 750. They were meant to take the place of the 600s. And Honda so far ain't having none of it. Neither is Suzuki. And we're kind of left with only Yamaha of the Japanese manufacturers, although they're leading the charge, buying into the super middleweight class. Let's see. Sarver's asking, how do you deal with not getting soaked by the rain on a motorcycle? You do get soaked when it rains. Depends. If you've got rain gear, they make specific rain gear. In fact, in Northern California, you would see guys on their adventure bikes, aka sport utility bikes, the way I call it. They would have their rain gear on. They would ride the bikes into the city, and then they would take the rain gear off, and they'd be in their work clothes. So, Let's see. Oh, Gold Wings. Gold Wings sell too. Gold Wings sell like crazy. Mike saying, oh, Suzuki's the best in my opinion. Middleweights are the most fun too. Get the combination of both to save money and still have reliability. Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about it, man, and folks go, well, they haven't updated it and they can't make more money. They can't make more power out of it. No. Oh, that's the other thing. God, I'm going to get a little bit long-winded on this. Okay, look, here's the deal. When it comes to making more power out of these bikes, you can't. Okay, you can't. Metallurgy will only let you get so far. We're all on a budget. And even if you made the whole thing out of titanium, titanium has its limits. Everything about these bikes in terms of making power and generating cylinder pressure, okay? We're at a stage now with technology. Now, I was just talking to a friend of mine about this on the car side. You can't make any more power with the gasoline that we have at our disposal. You can't. You can't put any more timing, and because of the fuel quality and the octane, you can't add any more compression. You have adjustable valves and everything else that comes with it. So you're never going to make more power. You just have to have better chassis and lighter weight materials and make the thing handle better and all of that. But that's the crazy thing when we're talking about bikes is they're extremely predictable with how they're going to make power. Give me a compression ratio, give me a displacement, and tell me what it's going to be used for. And I can almost, like within 10%, either way, I can get you within a power number. Mike saying, if I was younger, I'd want a CBR Fireblade. It's an awesome bike. But those bikes are so small and light. I'm too fat for that. Not to mention Suzuki still gives you more power. They do. The thing is, so the Honda is a funny bike because it doesn't follow the mold of just more, right? And like the Triple R, the Pirate version, the RRR, that's one thing, and it'll make a ton of power. The bike I like is the Double R. No real technology. You can turn everything off on that bike for the most part, but it's a smaller bike. It's lighter than the Gixxer, much smaller in dimensions than the ZX10. And it's just a more fun place to be. And I really like that bike. Although I think that the technology suite on that thing can be a little bit picky with tire sizes. But, that bike with a tune and maybe a slip-on is really all you need to have a really good time on a leader bike without getting too deep into, the trappings of, 180 plus horsepower to the rear tire. Matt saying the SP. There's an SP2 at the dealership right now. I think it's a 20. I forget what the year. I did the riding review on it. It's a really nice bike. Nice checking in. Hundos. But with that, guys, I didn't realize we are already running over an hour. But we're deep into this one. I like it. So I do have to check out. I got to get back to work. Guys, thank y'all so much for hanging out. Appreciate each and every one of y'all. Don't forget, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. But with that, guys, thanks again. Hope to catch y'all on the next one. Be on the lookout for some of those standalone videos as the weather starts getting better. I'll be out getting more and more ride reviews, so stay tuned for that as well. Look forward to catching y'all on the next one. Y'all take it easy.